What's up, bitches?
Let's talk about crime.
What's up, bitches?
Hello.
This is I'm tired today.
Mm-hmm.
We just got back from camping.
Literally like
half an hour ago. Yeah, we just got back from camping, but we have to record today and we got to get done because I'm leaving on Tuesday for Disneyland for an anniversary trip with the hubs. So I got to get this done now so that I have time to edit and all the things. So this is our first episode of the new season after we've had our 1 year. And so it's going to be it's going to be something different. It's going to be something that's not something we're used to. Well, we've decided to add a little bit of extra oomph to our podcasting. So we had originally said we would never do anything that was unsolved. We will be doing unsolved. We also are going to add in some maybe paranormal haunting type stuff. Really, the biggest reason why is because it just broadens what I can research. It's getting really hard to research solved crimes, which is sad. It's not that there isn't that many.
Well, but even if there's sometimes
there's
it's
just so
boom,
many
boom.
more. Yeah, there's just so many more unsolved or hauntings or whatever.
And I'm sure we might do some of the more notorious, famous ones that people know too. We won't do them a bunch, but this season we might do one or two where it's going to be a 2, 3, maybe even fucking 4-part kind of a episode.
So we will jump right into what we're doing this week. So this week this is going to be the first unsolved murder that we've ever talked about on this show. We're going to be able to basically, what's cool about the unsolved stuff is maybe we can come up with our own theories, so it's just a little bit more of a what do you think type thing. And then it also leaves you thinking what do you think happened? So we are talking about the year 1991 in Austin, Texas. And it is an unsolved case to this day. 4 girls are murdered at a local yogurt shop. And this is actually known as the yogurt shop murders. And if you haven't or don't...
Bro, I've fucking heard of this.
Well...
I've never read the case, but I've
HBO
heard
Max,
of... Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say.
They have a 4-part docuseries on it. So yes, I watched that. And then I also did my own research as well. Yes, this is one that already... Sierra, you said popular. This one has probably become pretty popular because it's already a series. But it's not a 4-parter. We're going to get it all done in one thing. I didn't do background. I'm doing this. It's very different because since it's unsolved, we can't do a background of a perpetrator. Feel rude, but I don't really feel like focusing on the background of the individuals who were murdered. Not because we don't care, because we do care about the people who are murdered. But the point of these podcasts is to talk about the crime. And then if you know who did it, why would you do something, right? So I'm just going to tell you who the victims were. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start out by telling you. So the victims were 13-year-old Amy Ayers, 17-year-old Eliza Thomas, 17-year-old Jennifer Harbison, and 15-year-old Sarah Harbison. Now, if you notice, there are 2 girls with the same last name. And yes, they were sisters. So imagine being that mother who didn't lose just one child, but both children. Jennifer and Eliza, the 2 17-year-olds, they actually were employees of the I Can't Believe It's Yogurt shop. So they were employees, typical high school job. This yogurt shop was kind of like in a strip mall. And Sarah, who is Jennifer's sister, and her friend Eliza, they were in the yogurt shop waiting to catch a ride home with the older sister. So Jennifer was supposed to be bringing home Sarah and Eliza. And so Jennifer had gone. The girls were at the mall earlier that day. Jennifer ran over, picked them up because the mall was very close to the yogurt shop. She ran over, picked them up, brought them back to the yogurt shop. Basically said hey, sit here, hang out. Once we close, I'll bring you home. They ordered pizza. They just hung out until it was time to go home. The shop closes at 11 p.m., which also...
That's late for a
yogurt shop.
That's what I said.
I was like, damn, that's a late-ass yogurt shop.
Maybe ours don't close.
I think the latest...
maybe.
Maybe.
I think the latest I've seen here is
10.
Yeah,
and that's in
10.
the summer. It has to be in the summer, which this technically is not summertime. This is in December. So they opened until 11.
That's my kind of yogurt shop.
Right?
Though.
That's what I'm
you.
saying. So yes, the yogurt shop was supposed to close at 11. All 4 girls were hanging out in the yogurt shop waiting for them to close. On December 6th, 1991, at about 11:47 p.m., a patrol officer drives by and sees that there are flames coming from the building that this yogurt shop is in. So he immediately calls it in. The firefighters arrive on the scene and they realize, oh, these flames are coming from this yogurt shop. Well, as they get into the yogurt shop to, put out the flames, they discover the 4 girls' bodies in the back room of the yogurt shop, and they had been stripped of their clothing. Now, according to the medical examiner, each girl had been shot twice in the back of the head. 3 of the girls were burned beyond recognition, and some of the girls were found bound together or bound with their hands behind their backs. Now, the thought was that the girls had been bound, gagged, and shot before the shop was set on fire. Police also noticed that the front of the store was locked, but the back door was unlocked. However, there were no signs of forced entry. But money was missing, which initially makes police think that this is a robbery kind of gone wrong, right? Unfortunately, the fact that there was a fire and the way that the blaze was put out by the fire department damaged evidence that could have potentially helped solve the murders. And it wasn't the firefighters' fault, to be fair. They didn't know that there were 4
No, they were
girls
doing their
murdered.
job.
Right. They went in to put out the fire and they found the girls afterwards. They still have to put the fire out. But now it's like by the time they get in there, they've erased a lot of evidence or whatever. So that's what we're talking about. Now I'm going to tell you what is known about that night. I'm going to tell you the things that are known, that are like factually known, and then we'll continue from there. So what is known is that Jennifer and Eliza were working the closing shift together. Sarah and Amy were at the yogurt shop because they were waiting for Jennifer to bring the girls home after they closed. We know that the last paying customer, left at approximately 10:42 p.m. Now, there were reports by those customers that when they left, there were 2 males that were still sitting in the shop, but they were like sitting at a table, but it didn't look like they had any yogurt or anything. They were just sitting there. And they noticed that those 2 males had been sitting close up to the register to where they could hear everything the girls were talking about. But again, and they kind of were not harassing the girls, but
Unsolved, it's those 2.
Probably, but we don't know who those 2 are. That's the problem. But yeah, so there is a report that there were at least 2 males left in the yogurt shop after the last paying. It was like a married couple left for the night. The policy at the yogurt shop is that the doors are going to be locked 15 minutes prior to closing. So they close at 11. So at 10:45, the door should be locked. But it's locked with a key. They leave the key in, and then what they do is they manually let people out or in. But I don't even think they really were supposed to let people in after 10:45. It was just to let people leave. But that way nobody could it was to keep them from people continually coming in. It was also there to protect the girls that were working there or any of the workers in the evening, because once they were getting ready to close, as they're trying to wind down 15 minutes prior, they're starting to take apart machines. They might be in the back room. They don't want people just randomly walking in. So 10:45, one of the girls goes and locks the door manually locks it. And that's how come they were able to get this, hey, there were 2 males in there when we left, because at 10:42, that couple actually had to manually be let out. Even though it's a little early, they had to ask one of the girls to let them out. So it was very noticeable that they were the last people in the shop that had bought yogurt, right? So that's why that's important. At 11:03, the no sale button on the cash register had been pushed, which if you don't know what a no sale button is, if you click the no sale button on a register, it pops open the cash drawer. So at 11:03, that pops open and it is discovered that $540 is missing from the register. So you would think part of that would make you think that at 11:03, whoever was in there with the girls probably at that point was robbing them and telling them, give us your money. So they open the register and give them the $540. Now, when the girls are found, Jennifer's body is found adjacent to Sarah and Eliza, whose bodies are stacked on top of each other. Now, it is found out later that Jennifer's body had actually also been stacked on top of the 2 younger girls' bodies. But when they were putting the fire out, like I think it was the hoses knocked her body off of there. So that's one of the things that right there is one of the reasons why it's like, okay, well, you just totally, that's not how the bodies were. So you can't even investigate that because now you've gotten water all over and now this girl is on the ground and she's not even in the original position. But also think about fingerprints and stuff. You're washing away
evidence.
Yeah. Not on purpose.
Yeah. Not their fault.
Not
They're
on
doing their
purpose.
Job.
But that's kind of an example of how because
you would
of
never
it,
expect to have 4 dead girls in the back of a fucking yogurt shop.
No. So that's why it's like this is why it remains unsolved, honestly. Now, Amy, which is the 4th girl, she's actually found still in the back room, but not near the girls. So the girls are in, there's like a map that you can actually look at that shows the girls are like in the back corner of the back room. And Amy is actually almost at the area where you would walk from the back room out to where the cash registers were. And so that's where her body was found. And Amy is not burned nearly as bad as the 3 girls. So the 3 girls were burned to basically unrecognizable. You couldn't, I don't think you'd be able to ID them by their face or anything because they were burned that bad. So I'm sure they used, process of elimination of who was there, but also DNA because again, this is 91, dental records, that kind of stuff, right? Her body is found. She's not nearly as burned as the other 3 girls. There's also signs of sexual assault on her. Now, that does not mean that the other girls were not sexually assaulted, but again, they were so badly burned that it was kind of hard to find more stuff on them. They also noticed that she had been shot twice, once with a .22 caliber weapon and a second time with a .380 bullet from a semi-automatic weapon. So 2 different weapons were used. Now, that was in one of the things, and I think there's a good chance that all the girls were shot like that, but all the girls were shot twice. But this girl was shot twice by 2 different guns. This actually is what leads the police to assume that there are at least 2 perpetrators, is the fact that there's 2 different weapons that were used. And the fact that there was 4 girls against 1 man would have been, or 1 person would have been kind of hard, but having 2 people would be a little easier. The initial investigation actually produces quite a few suspects. One of them was a 16-year-old kid who actually brought a .22 caliber gun into the nearby mall. Just a few days after the murders, he was caught with this gun and he was questioned profusely to the point where the police actually thought they were onto something with him. They discover, though, that he seemed to only be giving them the answers to the questions that they were asking because he was trying to basically rid himself of the gun charge that he was going to get. So he was almost like feeding them information about these four girls that were killed, giving them info, hoping that they would drop the gun charges because he's a corroborating witness type thing. Because he tells them that his friend had asked to borrow his gun and that when he returned back to him on the night that these girls died, he was all sweaty and he smelled of hairspray. And the reason the hairspray wasn't important was because there was a fire. But the fire department noted that hairspray had nothing to do with the fire. The fire was not lit by hairspray. So right then they were like, as soon as he says that, they're kind of like, well, what the fuck? Okay, well, hairspray doesn't have anything that's not how this fire started. Then the kid also goes on and tells them that after this guy returns with the gun, sweaty and smelling of hairspray, they decide to go to San Antonio to visit one of the kid's girlfriends. And when they return, the same guy asks, "Hey, can I borrow your gun again?" To which this kid says, "Well, why do you want to borrow my gun again?" He's like, "Because I want to go kill girls like I did the night before." So this is what he's telling the police happened. As they're really listening to what he's saying, as they're listening, again, the hairspray and other comments, they automatically start to realize, like, no, this kid's fucking lying through his teeth. This shit doesn't match what we found at the scene. So he's making up some bullshit. And so they eliminate him as a suspect. They eliminate his 3 friends, and all of them were under 17 at that time too, or 17 and under at that time. And so it's kind of like, while it's in the beginning was a good prospect, 4 men or 4 boys against 4 girls. That makes some sense. But then when he starts really talking to them, it's like, okay, none of this really makes sense. During this time in Austin, there was also an active serial killer in the area named Kenneth McDuff.
Please tell me you guys are doing Kenneth
I didn't know of him. I haven't. I will at some point. I didn't even.
I'm
sure he's in one of my serial killer books, but
you should do him next though.
No, because I have my own way of doing my serial killers. So he was heavily looked into, not because I think they had already caught him at this time. No, maybe not. They started, I think they were
trying to see if he was connected.
Comparing, yeah. And they...
Like his MO to
correct.
What happened.
But because he had been I think he also had killed and lit on fire or something, but the rest of it didn't match up. And so they were able to rule him out. Then 2 men from Mexico came forward and said that they killed the girls. They literally came forward, said that they murdered the girls and gave like these elaborate stories. And that was in 1992. So it's like, well, I don't know when in 1992 because I didn't write the date down. But I mean, you figure this happened the end of 1991. So maybe probably a couple months close, later, yeah. Right? Pretty soon after these men confess, people that are looking over their statements and stuff are starting to find there's some inconsistencies in their confessions compared to what actually happened at the crime scene. One of them was the caliber of weapon. One of them, they were confessing to shooting with a caliber of weapon that wasn't used. So they were like, well, that doesn't make sense. Which in the end, it ends up ruling out their confessions as well. And the two men actually come forward because they get extradited to Mexico. So Mexico and America were doing it together, and they were going to be charged in Mexico for this crime. And they end up coming forward and saying, we didn't kill them, but we were coerced into it. We were brought in by American police officers. We were beaten. We were told that we had to confess to this and all this stuff. And people are like, okay, that's weird. And so that's when they start looking to see, well, let's read their confessions. And they realize that their confessions didn't match. After this specific incident, one of the detectives who was not really in charge of this particular incident, but was brought in to help on this, his name was Hector Polanco. He was known as being the guy in the Austin Police Department who closed almost all of his cases because he would always get confessions and he'd always find the person and they'd end up confessing to the crime.
He was the one.
He was the one, and that's why he got brought in, actually, was because they were like, well, if we're going to get a confession, we're going to bring in the guy who's really good at getting confessions. Well, he was taken off this case. And he was actually moved to a different department and eventually gets completely fired because it is discovered that he had been coercing false confessions out of multiple people in multiple cases. One in particular, it was 2 men that went to jail for 13 years before it was found out that they were basically beaten into confession. And one of the men in prison was beaten so badly he has brain damage and he was innocent.
Damn.
Yeah. So he was, and this Hector Polanco basically fucked the case from here because he was like, oh, this guy did it. Oh, these guys did it. And of course, the 2 Mexican men who said they did it, they had talked to Hector Polanco. And Hector Polanco also was the one who tried to get a confession out of the kid with the .22 caliber gun. So it was constant. Like he would come forward and be like, I got it. This is the person. And then somebody would look at what the confession is. They're like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. That's not right. Now, in 1996, so again, this happened in 1991, even though they had put in over 30,000 hours of investigation and thousands of leads had come up from those, they literally had nothing. So 5 years later, they still don't have jack shit. Then in 1999, Austin Police Department ends up reopening this case because they really want to find out who did this. The yogurt shop murders really fucked this town up because Austin wasn't as big in 1991 as it is now. It was a smaller town, and this was not something that happened in this town. So they reopened it. And part of the reason they also reopened it is they were saying that in 1999, there had actually been a decline in the murders in Austin. So that left them room to open up a cold case. And they decided this cold case is the one that they really wanted to look into. However, it was nothing new popped up. Nothing had come to their attention to reopen the case. They just started literally with the same information that they had stopped with. So they just have to do fresh eyes, kind of. They brought in new detectives and all this kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, the 2 main detectives that were on the case originally, when they reopened it, they got taken off the case and they put somebody else in that case, which is kind of a shit thing to do. I don't think they should have been taken off, but I definitely think they should have brought in some new detectives. But the guys who were there originally, they have a lot of knowledge, right? But whatever. I guess just to get a fresh set of eyes onto it. I don't know. So these new detectives, they take a closer look at the 4 boys that were first interviewed in 1991. And within 2 months of re-looking at this case, the Austin Police Department announced that they had arrested the 4 men in connection with the murders. So those 4 boys that originally came out that they said, nah, it's not it. These new detectives took one look at their interviews and were like, these are very plausible suspects. I don't know why you guys would have discounted them so quickly. So they arrested Robert Jr. Springsteen, Michael James Scott, Maurice Pierce, and Forrest Wellborn. They were all high schoolers at the time of the murders, and they all had been charged with capital murder at this point. So they literally arrest these 4 they're guys, men now, but these 4 men that were boys that had already been looked at, but the police, I guess the new detectives felt that the old detectives didn't do their job. So Maurice and Forrest were actually charged as juveniles, though, because they were under 17 at the time the murders took place. So they were charged as juveniles. The other 2 were not, they were charged as adults. Police explained that Michael and Robert Jr. had confessed that they were involved in the murders and implicated Maurice and Forrest in their statements after they had started re-interviewing them. Maurice and Forrest did not ever confess to having anything to do with this murder. However, Maurice tells the police, so Maurice is the one who was caught with the gun when he was 16 years old. He tells the police that he gave his .22 caliber weapon to Forrest and that he had said that Forrest told him that he had killed some girls. And Forrest says, yeah, I did say that, but I was just kidding. Like, I didn't do it. I was just kidding. It's just the girls had been murdered. And so I was like, oh, yeah, I did it. He's like, I didn't actually do it. What's funny to me is that Maurice and Forrest actually get released by the cops because they have no evidence that indicates that the 2 boys were ever involved in the murder since they didn't confess. But what's funny to me is the fact that Maurice literally said that Forrest said he killed the girls, and he was one of the ones they let go. They had interviewed those guys multiple times and they just could not find anything to charge them with because they wouldn't confess to anything. They kept saying they had nothing to do with it and they have no physical evidence to connect them. So they had no choice but to let them go. Now the charges are officially dropped in 2000 for Forrest, and in 2003, they are officially dropped for Maurice. Robert Jr. Springsteen, though, is still arrested and he actually goes to trial. And his trial starts in 2001. And it is alleged that he had cased the I Can't Believe It's Yogurt shop on December 6th in 1991, and which is one day before the murders. Then they said that he returned on the 7th to rob the store with his friends. They then forced the girls in the back room where they shot and killed them. So this is what the prosecutors were saying. Now, the jury was also shown a statement that was written by Robert Jr. that had details that they said only the killer would know. Okay. Now, Robert Jr.'s defense attorney tells the jury that his confession was coerced and that the police had lied to Robert Jr. during their interrogation. So during his interrogations, he actually had been asked where he was the night of the murders. And I actually saw so there was not any videos of his original, like in 1991, but I saw the 1999 interrogations. And it said, they asked him, like, where were you on December 6th, 1991 at 11 o'clock at night? And he said, well, I thought I had watched the Rocky Horror Picture Show with my friends. Like, that's in my memory, I was at the Rocky Horror Picture Show with my friends. And then he says, but you guys told me that movie wasn't playing that night. So obviously I wasn't there, and that was a lie. The Rocky Horror Picture Show movie was playing that night, but the police told him it was not. So he said so obviously that's a lie, so I don't know. And then eventually, after hours and hours and hours and hours of talking to him, he is asked the question again, and he's like, I guess I had murdered them and I just blocked it out of my memory or something. That is what he said. In the interview, I watched it myself. So he ends up writing up a confession about murdering these girls. Now, his confession says that it's only things that the killer would know. The problem is when you are coerced into a confession, and I know people think it's fake, but it's real as fuck. Because if you're told over and over, well, that movie's not playing, so there's no possible way you could have been at that movie. Eventually, you're going to be like, am I getting the days mixed up? Why can't I remember anything from that day? Because I swear that was the day I went to the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And then it's like, but it wasn't playing that day. So that must have been like the day before. And then they're telling you like, well, we know you were there because we saw, we have a couple who points out that they saw two men that did match your description and, so-and-so's description and Michael's description. And then it's like, okay, well, wait, maybe I was at the yoga shop. And eventually you're like, yeah, I'm guessing and block this out of my memory. I must have killed them. Like, I don't remember doing it, but they were fed, or he was fed in details and information without directly telling him things that only the killer would know. But he was told it in like hinted ways, and he would repeat it to them. And they're like, oh, well, only a killer would know that, So it's things like that. It's real crazy. It's a real thing. It's one of the problems that happens with how you interview, or the tactics of interviewing. And there is, when I was watching the documentary, they were talking about how there was a book that they would study on how to interview. But in the book, it literally says things like, to make them say this, you would do this. So it's basically a book to teach you how to coerce a confession out of somebody, which is wrong. A confession needs to be a real thing, not something that somebody made up, right? And coerced confessions happen a lot. So he ends up writing a statement saying that he murdered, actually, I don't even know if it said he murdered the 4 girls, but that he murdered at least one of them. And again, I physically watched with my own eyes how he said, well, I thought I was watching the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but y'all told me that movie was not playing that night. So that must not have been where I was. And he was dead set as an adult male going, that's all. I literally remember watching it that night, but you guys are telling me that it wasn't playing, which again was a straight up lie. It was playing that night. So after 3 weeks at trial, Robert is found guilty of the murder of Amy Ayers, which is the one that is found by herself. He is sentenced to death in June of 2001. Then Michael James Scott starts his trial in 2002. So he is also facing capital murder charges of Amy Ayers as well. So they're only charging them with the murder of the one, which I don't know why that was, but that's all they were doing. Prosecutors actually read his 8-page confession to the jury. So he had an 8-page confession that he had written that was read to the jury. However, Michael Scott later had recanted the confession and said, I didn't mean it. Like, I don't know why I wrote that stuff because I didn't do it. Now, his defense attorney argues that his confession that was read at trial, if you really listen to it, didn't even match actual things at the crime scene that had been reported. And so his defense attorney was like, they're saying this happened, but per the police report, this is actually what happened. So yeah, his defense attorney is basically like, no, you guys are trying to say that he admitted in 8 pages of a confession to tell you that he murdered these girls, but I can pinpoint areas where what he said didn't actually happen. He said it happened didn't actually happen. So Michael was found guilty after 24 hours of deliberation, and he was sentenced to life in prison. I have no idea why one got the death penalty and the other life in prison. Really? I don't know. Both Robert Jr. and Michael appeal their sentences, obviously. And eventually, both of their convictions are actually overturned due to them being denied the ability to cross-examine each other during their trials, which is their Sixth Amendment right. So when they were in their trials, instead of putting each other on the stand for them to basically say, no, we didn't do this, because they both were now saying like, yeah, I confess, but I'm telling you I didn't do this, but I confess because they wouldn't let me leave. They kept telling me I did it, so I must have done it, but I didn't do it. And they would not allow them to testify either against each other or for each other. Their convictions were actually overturned because of that.
Which good, because I feel like the one guy
that was weird.
Does not deserve the death penalty.
Then when their convictions were overturned, the prosecuting attorneys were like, well, we're going to retry them. And the judge said, you have every right to do that. So then do that. But what you did was not, how it was handled was not okay. But they pushed it back. They pushed it back. They pushed it back. And finally, the 2 men were released on bond because they were supposed to be retried. And every time they'd want to do a retrial, the prosecutors would be like, we want to ask for like, what what do you call it? Like an extension of time. We don't have enough evidence at this time. Well, you cannot just keep somebody in jail because you don't have enough evidence to make their case.
Right.
If you don't have evidence that you feel is going to win the case, then they should not be in jail. And that's it. And so the judge finally was like, okay, well, I'm not going to have you keep pushing this back. So fine, I'm going to let him go. On August 20th of 2008, both Robert Jr. and Michael actually requested to have DNA testing done because there was a sample of DNA that was taken from the body of Amy Ayers. And they wanted to compare that sample. Robert and Michael both wanted their DNA compared to that sample to basically prove that they were not there, that they didn't do it. So they did. They put their DNA in. They also took that DNA before they even knew much about, like, before they even knew anything about any of this. They checked the DNA and found that it was male DNA, though. That's how they know it wasn't from Amy herself. It was male DNA found on her body. And so they took that and they've kept it. So their DNA, along with Maurice and Forrest, the other two boys, did not match that unknown male DNA found at the crime scene. So that means that not one of those boys was near Amy. It doesn't mean they weren't there. It means that Amy, the murder of Amy and the sexual assault of Amy was not any one of them. And to be fair, it would have been at least one of them if they were all involved at all, right? Now in 2009, the prosecution files with the judges to actually drop the charges against Robert Jr. and Michael because they were not ready to go to trial. And the judge basically is like, shit or get off the pot. You know, you can't, they're out of prison, but you can't just hold this shit over their head for the rest of their life with the thought they might go to jail. And never mind the fact that because in 2008 they had their DNA tested, they now have no chance of getting these guys found guilty of anything because their DNA now sets them free, basically, right? And they actually did, after the charges were dropped, because they did officially dismiss their charges on October 28th, 2009. So they actually did take the charges away. Well, after that, they interviewed some of the jurors who had found them guilty and said, like, if you would have gone to trial with this, and if you would have seen that their DNA ruled them out as the ones who sexually assaulted Amy, would you have found them guilty? And they all said no. They said, no, we wouldn't, because DNA is the thing now. If your DNA is there, you were there. But if it's not, if your DNA is not there, then no.
DNA tells you.
It tells you a lot. Yeah. So
like you could convict somebody simply just from DNA.
So in 2010,
like in this case, if they were ever found out with DNA,
correct. They'll be able,
case solved.
Exactly. And maybe there's more than one person, but if they can find out whose DNA that is.
You know that bitch is going to rat somebody
else. Well,
that's
what I was going to say. You bring
likely.
him in for questioning and maybe you find out who else was there, but you'll at least get the one, right? You'll at least get one. So December 23rd of 2010, in a routine traffic stop, Maurice Pierce, which again, if you remember, Maurice was the one who originally went to the mall with the gun at the age of 16 years old. So he gets pulled over by the cops in like a routine traffic stop, but he decides that he wants to run. I don't know why. This ends up being a very brief pursuit though. And Maurice ends up getting into like a struggle and a fight with this police officer. And while he's in the middle of this fight, he pulls out a knife and stabs the officer, Frank Wilson, in the neck. To which Officer Frank Wilson pulls his gun out and shoots and kills Maurice.
Fucking rightfully so.
And Frank Wilson does live. Okay. But I am going to make a real side note here real quick. I know that Maurice was discounted. I understand that. But he doesn't sound like he was that great of a character anyway.
No.
Like, I'm just going to say that. Okay. We're just going to point that out. Now, as of 2025, so this is literally as of this year, here are some things. So there are new detectives now that are looking into this cold case. They're focusing on trying to figure it out.
I can't even imagine trying to be a cold case detective.
Especially in this one.
That'd be so fucking frustrating.
Of course. Well, especially in this case because it wasn't handled appropriately in the beginning.
Things are coerced.
Exactly.
Half the statements.
It wasn't handled properly in the beginning. Because it was a fire, that already makes DNA evidence hard. But then because of the cleanup of the fire, that made DNA evidence hard. It was 1991. They collected DNA evidence, not being able to really use it, but not very much. 3 of the victims are burned to unrecognizable, so there's not much you can do with that. There's really nothing. It's not like they had cameras or they just didn't have anything. So they have new DNA or new detectives. They are also still trying to link the DNA to a person. So they know it's male for sure, but they have not had any new suspects yet that have popped up, right? So they have this DNA, they've put it into all the different systems, and there's no match for this DNA. So right now it just means that person's DNA is not in the system. I think they've even done genealogy. I think they've even gone that, although I'm not 100% sure that might be the next thing they're doing. I don't know. They did. I will say this. I was really pissed at first, and then I realized, oh, wait, hold on. They actually thought they had a lead on the DNA because it matched a DNA, or the DNA matched a sample that was done in a random testing thing at a college. And it was through the FBI. And so they reached out to the FBI and said, we need to know who this person is. We need to know who it is. There was like a small match and like a familial match almost, right? And they were like, the FBI refused. They refused. They were like, well, we don't have the authorization to give it, right? That was my thing, is I was like, what the fuck? What do you mean?
You're the FBI. What the fuck are you talking about? You say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am.
Right. However, after I read into it, I found out that it's not that they didn't have the authorization, but it was a anonymous testing. So they didn't actually even have. So they said, like, we don't even have their information. Okay, we don't have the person's information.
And I feel like that's just fucking dumb.
Well, but then they took the actual DNA that it like matched with, and they ran the samples next to each other and found that it only actually matched on 16 alleles. And they said that it needed to be like way more than that to be a solid match anyways. So 16 alleles could be like just because they're similar, or they could be like, I don't even know, not related at all, right? So they had said like you would need, I thought they said like at the bare minimum, you'd have to have at least 25 to even take a closer look at it. So it was after they did all that, they were like, fuck, okay, that didn't work out for us. Never mind, right? So that's where it sits with the DNA. It has been quoted by Detective Dan Jackson, who is currently assigned to the case. He said, if I didn't think I could solve it, then why would I get up every day? I think that with new technology, new information that we have that I can't go into, even since I've taken this case over, the ability to do more with less when it comes to forensics is light years ahead than it was a few years ago. When I started, we needed a certain amount of DNA. We were not even close to having it, but that amount that you need now is so much less. So his point is we have a really tiny piece of DNA that we're trying to match. And, you know, a few years ago, you needed, again, like 25 or more alleles to even look at it. And it's every year it gets smaller and smaller. You need less and less pieces of DNA to make those DNA links, right? Or to DNA matches. So he's saying he has full confidence that he thinks that they will find whose DNA this is. Or
I think they'll end up finding it, though, when the person's like dead.
Well, but you know what? Even that, though, that'll probably give the parents peace of mind, because you got to think about this. Those parents, think of the roller coaster they've been through. Their daughters are murdered, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, these boys were responsible. No, they weren't. These Hispanic men weren't responsible. No, they weren't. The serial killer could be responsible. No, he's not. Wait, it's the 4 boys again. Oh, no, they're not. Like, can you imagine? And nobody knows, right? And I think with the DNA technology that we have now, I do think that there is a chance that we will. I
feel like it's a lot harder to get away with murder now than it was back in the day.
I do too. So I definitely have high hopes that they will hopefully find somebody who is responsible for this, even if the person is dead. It'll give closure to the family to know that they officially know who did it. But my hope would be that you would find them when they're alive to maybe find out why. Still to this, I mean, I'll be honest with you. In my mind, I still kind of think it's a robbery gone wrong.
I do too.
I think that
I think it was maybe one of the girls were gonna go bring the trash out, and then...
No, I think it was the 2 boys. I do. I think it was the really? 2 men. Not the boys that were free. Not those guys. I think it was the 2 men that were last seen in the yogurt shop, because they didn't buy yogurt, and they were kind of like not harassing the girls, but being kind of shitty. So I think that as soon as everybody left the yogurt shop, I think that at 11 o'clock when the girls were like, okay, it's time to leave, and went to go let the guys out, I think that they were going to rob them. But I think what they didn't realize is I don't think they realized that there were 4 girls there. I think they thought it was just going to be like the 1 and 2 girls, because I think the 2 other girls sat in the back room while they were waiting for the sister and her friend to clean up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they were surprised by the 4 girls. I think the fire was lit exactly for what it did, which was to cover up any sort of evidence. I do think that's what the fire was lit for. And so I think it's going to be hard, but I think with all the technology that we have in this world and with all of the true crime detectives and all the things out there, I genuinely think that we will find this case to come to a close at some point. I just don't know when. I did see that.
I'm going to be honest. I don't think any of the suspects that were listed.
I don't either.
I don't
that
think
was
it's
my
any
okay.
of them.
So that was going to be the way that was my question. My questions were, do you think the 4 boys were somehow involved, or do you think that they were coerced into giving their confessions?
I think they were coerced.
And
I think everybody that was
I do
involved
too.
was coerced with their confessions.
I
I
do
don't think
too.
a single one of them actually. I don't think a single one of them was in a 50 fucking mile radius.
Yeah, I
to the
agree.
yogurt shop.
I agree. And then my other question is, do you think this case will ever be solved?
I think it will, because I mean, you think about it, DNA alone. I mean, we've had cases that were from the fucking 80s that they did DNA testing, and now the person's caught in jail or
Yep.
dead, but at least we know closure who committed the crime.
Yep.
So I definitely think they will. I do think that if they haven't done genealogy, I fully think
I
they
do too.
should, because I feel like if they were able to catch Brian Kohberger with genealogy,
A tiny
amount
sliver on that sheath.
there's no way in fuck you can't tell
Well,
me you
and
can't
that,
catch
and
him
again, this is
based on that.
2025, so
And they didn't even catch Brian. They caught, or
his
they
dad, or
connected it to
something.
his dad,
Yeah.
which then connected it
Yeah.
to Brian.
So my hope is the same thing. And they didn't say, I did not read anything that talked about possible genealogy. I didn't, but the problem is when you think about it, like Me and 23, they've been sold. So the problem is with those records and stuff, some of those records are disappearing because before Me and
23andMe
or 23andMe DNA testing facilities closed, they actually told their customers that if you wanted them to erase your DNA, you could request it and they would erase it. So that's the one problem, is some of these DNA facilities, they might have had something, but there's not really records of it now. I don't know. I think, but I didn't read anything about genealogy testing. So I'm hoping that that is one of the steps they're going to be taking.
This is sometimes when I wish, and I work for a corporate organization, but this is sometimes where I wish that when you got a job, no matter how low totem pole or high totem pole of a job it is, when you are hired, especially for your first job, that you have to submit some sort of DNA testing just for things like this. Because I know there's people out there that don't work, but there are so many Americans that work.
You know,
that it's like, you can't tell me you wouldn't be able to
doing
solve it
the
based on
DNA,
that.
doing
or
forced,
even for medical.
doing forced DNA testing. People are so. I've
I'm
said
all
this a
for
million
it.
times. I've said a million times.
You know
like,
how many cases could possibly be solved because of
I'd
it?
give my DNA. I don't care. I don't
Yeah,
care
take
about
my
it like
DNA.
that.
I don't give a fuck.
I don't have any weird.
What do I
thing
have
about
to
it.
hide? Nothing.
There's a lot of people though who are so against mandatory DNA testing. It's crazy because I'm like,
Nah.
like you said,
I'm all for it.
like you said, what, like, that could help solve a lot of things. I also, this is a sidebar, I feel the same way about having like AT&T and that kind of shit being allowed to break into your phones when there's a criminal case. I have zero problems with somebody taking my cell phone. If I died and my phone was the last thing you found, I would have zero issues if AT&T broke into my phone.
I'll put it in my will
to find out what happened.
Break into anything,
right?
And
Or
everything
if you find somebody who you think is like a serial killer and they have a cell phone but it's locked and they refuse to open it for you.
I'm sorry, but I feel like
think I think we should have I think they should have a right to break in. I mean, hello. Y'all can go through everybody's damn garbage the minute they set it on the street because it's public record. Or public,
i.e. the homeless people in our neighborhood.
It's public, so you're allowed to physically go through somebody's garbage whenever you want to. So it's like for criminal, I'm not talking about just every day your boyfriend's like, I think she's cheating. Show me her.
No,
text.
but I think if you are actively a suspect in
I think all bets are off.
Murder case, robbery, I don't give a fuck what it is. I know murder is going to be obviously the highest one, but if you are a suspect, whether you really did it or not, I feel like those like protected, I don't even know if you want to call them rights, but like protected rights that you have of not having to unlock your phone or not commit to DNA testing, things like that. I'm sorry, but if you are a suspect, that should be null and void because you are a suspect for a fucking reason.
Yep.
And yeah, it could be the littlest thing of, yep, you're the boyfriend and you were the last one seen.
Yep.
And you didn't do shit. Like,
and I'll be honest
fine.
with you, if that was me, if I was the wife and my husband was the last person was seen with me, I will gladly hand my shit. Well, I mean, like, unless I killed him, I guess. But see, that's what I'm saying. As an innocent person, I'd be like, yeah, take everything. Try to figure it out. I want to see
and then
it.
It would make the cops be sus if you're like, no, I'm
not going to show you. So
and
yeah,
then if you have to be forced
I feel
to
the
do
same way. I feel the same way. I wish there was a little more transparency in our world because I think it would make it easier for us to catch these, like this kind of thing, anything like this. So anyways, that is our very first unsolved case. So thank you for joining us. And we've got all the socials and stuff. So if you want to pipe up and say any of the thoughts you have on the yogurt shop murder, and also if you are bored, go watch it on Max because it is really interesting. It's a very interesting 4-part series. Go watch it. See what you think. See if you have any ideas or thoughts or whatever. And either email us and I'll talk about it, or just hit us up on one of our socials and we can discuss it. Other than that, follow us. If you're not following us, share us so that other people can hear about things like the yogurt shop murders. And until next week, I want to say thank you very much for listening to us talk about our very first unsolved case.
Welcome to season 2.
Bitches. Catch you on the flip side, bitches.
Bye, bitches.